Hi, everyone. Welcome to Office Hours, where we answer your questions 7 days a week. Your questions and votes matter every single day, so go to get them in early, get them in often. All right, let's go ahead and jump into those questions. Bill, what do we have?
Mike Edwards starts us off from Brooklyn, New York. Mike says, morning, everyone. What does the panel think about the ScienceImage family of encoders and decoders, more specifically, the Vela Rack SDI?
Good, Courtney.
I took a look at it. It looks a bit like the 12 gigabit or the 4K Blackmagic. However, it is priced much more highly. I think it is around $1 short of $1,300 at B&H. It's quite capable. If you look at the protocols that it can encode, it handles 10-bit and RTMP and SRT and HX2 and NDI. So it does do NDI. That's one of the differences between it and the Blackmagic. So it looks pretty nice. It looks like about a third of a rack in height. I mean, a third of a rack width and 2 high. So it looks like it could be promising, although it is just out. B&H does carry it for $1,300. I suppose it's shipping.
Yeah, I was going to try to show it, but my their website is very slow. I don't know whether that's it's taking.
It's all full of JavaScript. I tried to zoom up on it. It's one of those things that you can't change anything on.
So that worries me. I kid you not. Like slow loading websites worry me that an encoder may not be the right fit. So, it's really slow in Chrome. So anyway, I like since Courtney started talking, I hit load and I haven't seen it yet. So anyway,
maybe it's that Macintosh software you're trying to use because it loaded right up.
I opened up another page just to make sure it wasn't me, and it just popped right open. So anyway, there's a lot of things in this realm. Videon, Osprey, all make things in this without actually testing these. It's really hard to say what we think of them because you really have to do a test of, at the same bit rates and everything else, what do they look like? And then look at the feature set, the interface. I think that Blackmagic actually has the best interface out there among all of them. But I don't think the encoding is as good, for the Blackmagic products right now. So, and I think that has to do with some of the chips that they're using for that. But that's the kind of thing you have to figure out is once you've decided that the quality of the encoders is good, what is the feature set that you need and does it fulfill those things? And then what does the interface look like and how easy is it to use? And Epiphan is also another one that would kind of go into this product, although I think their products are a little bit more expensive. Next question.
Next one comes to us from John Foltz in Seelings Grove, Pennsylvania. And John wonders, our school might host a Division III football playoff with an ESPN broadcast. They're going to send a Haivision Makito X Encoder. What do I need to know about these for the show?
Not much. They may want to have a static IP, from those encoders. I don't think that they need them, but they may ask for one. So that might be one thing there. Those Makito X encoders, it's just a baseband signal that if they're giving you that, they're going to expect they're just going to expect you to give them baseband. So it's not there's nothing particularly complicated other than you're going to want to make sure that you're clearing out enough bandwidth for them. I can't remember if those if the Makito X's are multi-channel. Let me see. So I think that they're just I'm just trying to find the. I think that they're single channel, but I can't. And I'm afraid hold on one second here. Let's take a look. So I think that let's see. Mickey said that, find out if it's a caller or a listener. I'm assuming that they're calling, that they want you to transmit. And what you're going to want to do is find out what bandwidth. I mean, if it's a single channel, my knee jerk would be give it 100 megs. Just, you probably don't need more than 50, and they're probably not going to use more than 20 or 30 off the Makito. But I would look at giving them 100 meg dedicated VLAN for a single channel. But if it was a 4-channel, I probably would only give it 200 megs. I think that'd probably be enough amongst all of them. As I said, it doesn't need a static IP, but it may they may ask for one. So take a look at that. Next question.
Douglas Carmichael's up with, what sleeve would you recommend for a MacBook Pro?
Go ahead, Bill.
So I'm not sure what you mean by sleeve, and here's why I'm saying that. There are a variety of coverings you can put on, and they have different purposes. In some cases, you have kind of the travel case, a sleeve that has a zipper on top and a kind of a soft interior that you slip your MacBook in to take it on the road or something like that. There are briefcase forms. That's what I've been using for decades. I have this Level 8 black case that I've used the last 3 MacBooks because it's large enough to accommodate the minor size variations they have. And this has been really successful for me. One thing I like is it has a really specifically quilted interior. I'm not sure if you can pick that up, but it's got all these little bumps which keep it really safe in there, and then enough room for power supplies and extra stuff and things like that. I've really enjoyed working with that. But the other thing that I'm a little leery of, other companies sell molded plastic sleeves to kind of snap on, and I'm always concerned about the heat buildup when you're putting something on that. Now, yes, they are designed to leave the vents on the back of the MacBook open, but it just seems like the few times I've tried those over the course of my computing career, it's always been more hassle than useful. These are the finishes on these MacBooks are pretty rugged, and yes, you can scratch or mess them up, but if you're at least a little bit careful, and if when it comes off of your desk or where you normally use it, you put it in something like one of those cases that I showed earlier, it's going to stay looking really good for a long, long time. So I wouldn't over protect it. The other thing is that every piece of technology loses value so quickly that trying to keep it pristine as opposed to a few little scratches, I'm not sure if that's going to have a gigantic effect on its resale value, because all these tech things are going to lose resale value fast. My 2 cents.
Good, Courtney. Oop, are you there, Courtney? We lost him. We lost Courtney. So anyway.
It's frozen, Courtney.
I will respectfully disagree with Bill. Is that I put almost all my laptops into those hard cases, and so part of it is that the best one that I have, and I was trying to find. I don't know where I put it. One of my older laptops, because they don't make them anymore. I had one with Legos, so it had a Lego outside. And the great thing about that is that I would buy my son just kits of Legos, and I said, "You can have all the Legos. I just want all the flat pieces." And so he would just dig through the Legos. I would just hand him a new kit, and he would dig through the Legos and get me all the little flat pieces. And you probably wonder why I have the flat pieces, because I would super glue those to my modem, to some of my hard drives, to other things like that, and I could just attach them to the back of my laptop. And you could just stick things, your modems and your connections and your hard drives and your everything else to the back. And so that was my favorite one to stick to it. But I usually have just black ones that are there. And the primary reason is to obviously protect it. We didn't worry too much about resale value or anything else, but it was nice to know that they weren't dinged up. I will admit I don't have it on my current one because I haven't been traveling that much, and it's really dinged up, and I didn't even need much work. So I think that I would have. Now I won't do it, but I would have. The big thing that I liked about it is stickers. So you when you buy stuff, you get stickers, and you don't want to put the stickers on your actual laptop. So by putting the plastic on, you can put stickers on it, and it only lasts as long as you have that laptop. So you can put all your fun little stickers that people send with their products, and you put it on there, the ones that you care about. You can use one of the 40 Apple logo Apple stickers that you have sitting in your shelf, because you always pull them out. Like, I always feel like I've been shorted if I get an Apple product and I don't get a sticker. I'm like, oh, I guess I didn't spend enough to get the sticker, you guys. Anyway, so evidently I found it's about $400. You've been more than $400, Apple's going to give you a sticker. You spend less than $400, no sticker for you. So anyway, but you save them all, but you don't know what to stick them to, because like, what's there? And so sticking them to the back of those the black ones, and people make some really cool ones that you can get there. But that's the most important thing for that. I don't really, we've used a lot of neoprene sleeves when we stack them in kits. So we get neoprene zip-up sleeves. It hasn't been a certain brand, but the neoprene ones work pretty well. You throw them in there, and then you throw them in your bag. So those are the things that I would suggest. Next question.
Next one comes to us from Lyle Kwiatkowski in Omaha, Nebraska. I'm looking into investing into a 3-point lighting kit. My primary clientele is interview-style testimonial videos. Are there any recommendations on the must-haves for this kit? Are there lighting brands that I should look for? The budget is between $1,500 and $2,000 US.
Go, Jesse.
I'm not going to speak on specific brands, but here's kind of how I thought out this shopping cart. We started with NAND lights, which is fine, but I'm not saying you got to get NAND lights. I'm just saying these are a good, good starter brand. 3 of those, and if you look up here, we got you in right under budget. Besides, what you want to do with those is make sure that they're bicolor and that they have a consistent mount that you're ready to buy into that mount system, because you're going to want to attach things to your lights, and you're going to want all those things to match from light to light to light across your studio. So whether it's Bowens or something else, you buy into one mount and you stick with that for your lights. You are going to need some light stands to put them on, so that's a couple more bucks there. What was the other? The really big thing that you're going to want to think about outside of the lights is diffusion. And we've been enjoying the Photix G capsule kits. They're pretty good general use. They've got a capsule. They've got diffusion, an umbrella, a couple of gels, a little magnet gel holder that attaches itself automatically, and they're affordable within your budget. And then you also want to be thinking about things like barn doors, if you can afford them, and stingers to get power from the wall to your lights wherever they are. And that should get you started within that $2,000 budget.
Good, Bill.
Good suggestions all the way around. Just here's how I think about it. Those 3 lights, the 3 sources. You've got a key, you've got a fill, and you've got a back or rim light. Those are the 3 tasks you normally want to get accomplished in 3-point lighting. Now, for your key light, there's 2 ways to think about it. Broad sources are much more flattering to individual, particularly faces, than our tight sources. The cool thing, and what Jesse was talking about a little bit, is you can get a small source like a cob chip-on-board emitter, and you can put all sorts of diffusion in front of it to make it bigger. It is a little less efficient than having something, and you will see a lot of like LED arrays or fluorescent tube arrays that are color balanced. They can be really good, and at the top of the end, way past your budget, some of the best lights I've ever used have been large, soft sources from companies like Light Panels that really do wrap around really easily. You don't have to modify them at all. You just roll them in and use them, but they're expensive. So for starting out, I think you want at least 3, at least 1 relatively strong cob, and then for your fill light, which is the opposite side from your key. So if I'm keying from this side, I want this side usually to be a couple of stops lower than that to just fill in. So some sort of cob light to do that, and then the heron rim light or the backlight. That's something where you want to have it be pretty light and pretty flexible, because you're going to want to fly it above them and behind somewhere, so that this top light that you can see the shadow casting on my face is what separates them from the background. And almost everything now is LED. I do not suggest you start off with a lot of those flat panel bead LEDs, just because it's really hard to cut them and mold with them. Single point source lights like those chip-on board lights are much easier to work with if you want to try to learn a little bit about sculpting shadows and things like that. So that's what I'd look for. Even the inexpensive stuff, the newer stuff for the stuff, the chips have gotten much, much better in this era, and they're pretty inexpensive. So look for something that you can start with 3 lights that are reasonably well color balanced from the same manufacturer, and then think a lot about how you're going to attach things to. And I think Jesse's point about make sure that the mounts are similar, whether you're using a Bowens mount or you're using a drop-in gel holder or something like that. Make sure you have the ability to put modifiers into that, and you can go long part of your career with just that basic set, and then build on top of it from there.
Go, Jesse.
And the other thing is, if you're planning to build and tear down this kit, do not cheap out on the diffusion capsules, because if you get the cheap versions and you're building them, tearing them down, the wear and tear will rip through them very, very quickly. Don't let that intimidate you. The lighting setup you're seeing right now is about $300. We have 2 60-watt Godoxes with really, really, really cheap diffusion capsules on them. So cheap we had to retire them for production because they're all torn up. We got diffusion on the front, and our kicker has no diffusion, just a blue gel. These are also monochrome. They're not bicolor lights. So we've got blue on the kicker and no diffusion, so you can see the sharp light coming in from behind and the soft light coming in from the front. That creates separation, so you can get across the finish line very cheaply if you need to.
Mickey says that he said I would probably look for 2 Nanlite mixed panel 60s and Pavo Slim 120Bs for the key and fill, and 1 Nanlite Forza 60B or 60C for the hair or rim light. Chris Sabato said, I have a pair of Nanlite Forza 500s and a pair of Nanlite Compact 200s. I'm very happy with both. Mickey said also that don't forget about the stands. Kupo stands are garbage.
There's a lot of garbage stands.
And sandbags for the stands. The glow modifiers and Chris said that the glow modifiers on Amazon are pretty adorable, and I've been happy with those too. So I think for me, I've done a fair bit of these interviews. The thing that I will go out in this price range. So I will admit that I use a different set of lights for most of the interviews that I do, but I'm getting ready to do some smaller things, mostly just so I can do behind the scenes and show all of you. So I'm going to be doing some stuff with some local businesses and with family and stuff like that, and show behind the scenes of some of those things. And what I'm going to probably end up using is either the Nanlite 100s or 68s. I can't remember whether it's the 100 or the 200 that starts putting fans into it, but we can hear them in the mics. That's the only, I can't remember where that happens, but it's either the 100 or the 200 that we start hearing those in the mics. And for a lot of things, it doesn't matter. We also hear the fan lights I have a little bit of noise reduction in this show. My mix, I have the mix panel 60s, which is what's lighting up the background here, and they do have a little bit of fan noise as well. So just note, if you're touchy about fan noise or don't want to filter it out later, think about whether these lights are going to produce fans. But in this price range, I think that I would be looking at a group of 68s or 100s. A lot of times I have 6Cs, just the 6Cs, that I use for accent lighting. They're USB powered. They're very small. They're magnetic. You can snap them to things. You can put them on little tripods, and you can add a little bit of flare in the background. I have to admit that if I am going to start sculpting, as Bill was talking about, I'll admit that I bring in a DP that sculpts. like if I'm going to shoot it, I'm looking for the largest light source I can put in there. I find that a lot of people will look at a large light source, regardless of the spill or the contamination of the background. And what I tend to do is try to get as far away from the background as possible. I just let's just move away from that, and then I'll light that separately. So I have to admit, I'm kind of a blunt instrument when it comes to these things, because I note that when people have really large light sources, they think it looks really good, and DPs will look at it and go, "Oh, you should have done X, Y, and Z." But the average person that I'm doing it with thinks it looks like the best thing they've ever seen of them. And so the other thing that I would recommend, so the ones that I'm recommending are not cobs. Reason that is that when I set things up quickly, the cobs take up a lot of space. If you put a big diffuser on it, the cobs take up a lot of space and they take longer to set up than just putting up panels. And they're a little harder to manage. I like big sources for hair lights because I don't like it to look like there's a hair light. I like it to be slightly brighter, but I like it to be a very diffuse. Like just it's there, you can see it on my shoulder here, but it doesn't look like I have a hard light anywhere, and I like to avoid that. And so the other thing that I tend to put in that kit is a collapsible 4x4 frame with some diffusion. So these are big 4x4 frames, and I usually have two of those that I have floating around somewhere, so that if the Nan lights are not enough, I can throw a frame up in front of it. Now it's really diffuse. And again, I find that large diffuse light sources are the number one thing that makes an average person look better. Actors can get away with hard sources. Most average people would do better with large sources. So anyways, go ahead, Bill.
I agree with everything Alex just said. I will say there are two other things that I would highly suggest if you want to learn lighting and be able to experiment with doing some minor sculpting, not that you have to go all the way. The two things that I wouldn't go on a set without, a fabric grid or some sort of grid to put on the light, my key light, to make sure that I don't get too much spill on the background. The other thing is at least one heavy stand with a boom or menace arm that you can fly a light out over your person. It's really hard to do a rim light on location if you have to put the light and the light stand off angle, because then you do one half of the hair and you don't get anything on the other one. So in almost all cases, I would take my larger boom arm and swing that light out right behind my interview subject, and it makes it much easier whether you're doing a soft or a hard backlight to position it correctly.
And when you do that, just remember to bring a lot of weight with you. Whether it's sandbags or shot bags. The shot bags can be really small and really heavy. so you'll start to learn that shot bags are your friend when it comes to lighting stuff, especially when you have your cantilever kind of over like that. A shot bag can be a lot more efficient, but it is more to carry. I would not recommend trying to carry 2 100-pound shot bags very far. Ask me how I know. Next question.
Next one comes to us from Jeff in Severna Park, Maryland. We recently added a few Behringer X32 mixers to our existing Dante system. Now some of those boards are getting spikes of static across all their Dante channels. Any thoughts as to what those could be from?
Mickey asked, does this happen even if there are no subscriptions assigned to the Dante channels? If so, try to reseat the X Dante cards. And he said, you mentioned previously that the X32s are already set to take clock from the card. I would monitor the event log and the clock status in the controller. Also, keeping an eye on possible multicast traffic on your network, especially if your switches are not do not have IGMP snooping configured. Make sure QoS is set appropriately. Now, Chris Sabato says, I had the exact issue with my X32 when I added it to a Dante-specific network. Not a lot of devices, but spread over a large campus network. Changing the X32 clock from card to internal resolved the issue. So I guess switch it back and forth and figure out which one works. But I think that I would ask, is this a network? Most of the time when we build networks, especially if you're going to have multiple mixers on it, when we build networks that matter, we very quickly tend to build a Dante network that is its own copper. Like, I know people will say you don't need to do that. You can do VLANs and everything else. But we had a tendency to just do everything's got its own switches, its own everything to make that happen. And Mickey said that what Chris said, this will only work if the said X32 is the leader. And we should get those guys on and talk about it sometime. Hopefully they'll be there on Wednesday. Wednesday, of course, is our audio day. And you can, I think you asked this last week on the audio day. So keep on adding more detail to this and we'll try to figure it out, Jeff. This is the fiddly thing because I don't think it's static. I think it's bit loss. It tends to sound like static, here and there. If it drops out, it's really a clocking thing. But if it's a little dits, it's sometimes a sampling error. But these are all good suggestions. Next question.
Next one comes to us from Tlaloc Lopez Waterman in New York, New York. Finally got Starlink for backup. Is there a router that can combine my services when they both work and fail over if one fails?
Go, Jason.
Yeah, Ubiquiti's Dream Machine Pro has this. I'm not sure if it will do failover for a broadcast, if it's going to be broadcasting on both things simultaneously, if you won't drop a frame or anything. But I've had very good luck with it.
Most failovers take a little bit of time. If you're not bonding them, so if it's true failover, it will. If it's true, like I'm using this one now, I'm gonna jump over to this one. There's gonna be a couple seconds in between because it's trying to make sure that you really need it. Otherwise, you'd have it bouncing back and forth all the time, and that would be chaos. Most things that have some version of internal failover are going to be a couple seconds of loss. Mickey said that routers from Peplink, and that's what I would use. That's what we've used in the most in the field. The Dream Machine Pro, I just got one. So it's sitting right here. The Dream Machine Pro should have that failover. I think you have to use one of the fiber connectors. One of the fiber.
Use one of the fiber and yeah, that's right. So in my test, it's about 10 seconds for failover.
Yeah. So you have one WAN connection in the Dream Machine Pro, and then you have a fiber. You have to use one of the SFPs to have the other connection there. But again, I think that for the most part in the field, we've used Peplinks for this. The ones that we've used that I have the most experience with are Meraki's, and the Meraki's are more expensive, and I think that it's about a 2-second drop off, and even the little MX60s do it. Next question.
Next one comes to us from David Brady in New York, New York. Does an Apple acquisition of Blackmagic Design make sense? YM Cinema has a compelling speculation. I'd be interested to hear the panel's thoughts on the topic, and they've got a link to the article.
Go ahead, Courtney.
I kind of looked. I skimmed through the article. Maybe should I used my should have used AI, Apple's AI, to skim it. But this is the article. I think they're just trying to generate a headline. Apple has never been known to acquire hardware. They've acquired a lot of software companies and implemented that software or Sherlocked them, but this is citing, the phones have gotten so good that they can rival a $20,000 camera, So, as
soon as they say that, you're like, okay, you don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah, I can rival that $20,000 motion picture camera. Oh. Yeah. And even if you look at I think that what generated this interest was the fact that Blackmagic was going to build this stereo vision camera for the Vision Pro that would be compatible with the Vision Pro. So there's some degree of cooperation on the hardware side between Blackmagic and Apple, but seeing as they have a competitive software editing product and a lot of competitive hardware, and Apple's has not been very much into the camera hardware market in the past, I doubt that would be a good acquisition for them. Plus, Blackmagic, as far as making it into the professional motion picture camera market, Blackmagic has a very, very small sliver, even smaller than Apple's sliver of the computer market. So wouldn't buy them a big, a big entree into the professional motion picture camera market, even if they did consume them. I don't think it makes a good match.
Go ahead, Jesse.
I had a well-considered answer until I read the article, and I just want to speak on this article a tiny bit because this is the kind of thing that just breeds distrust in me. When you get to the first paragraph of an article online and it doesn't read like it's written for humans, but it's written for Google to be scraping it for keywords, that's when I really quickly lose trust in an article. To speak a little bit on the premise of the article, no, I don't see any value to their merger. Maybe I'm sure it's come up at Blackmagic's side, like what if Apple offered? I'm sure it's come up over at Apple's side, like should we make an offer? But it doesn't seem like either of them are headed in that direction, or would be for any reason.
Now, I will respectfully disagree with the inserted links, because that's like the new form of bibliography. It's like telling you where we got all this. So it lets you go back to the source. It allows you to refer to something. I use them a lot, and other people use them. I don't think about Google at all. When you see these hyperlinks that are going through there, what's saying is this is the reference, and I'm not going to talk about this whole thing, but you can click on here and see it later. And so that I actually enjoy a lot. I didn't like it at first because I didn't like the colors changing. I'm a weird thing about colors. I didn't like the color changing, but after a while I've gotten used to it, and I click through those all the time to go find more detail on that one thing. So I do like that in that area. I don't know if that would be a distrusting. The distrust that I have for the article is mostly almost all the words that were written. So like this was written by someone I don't think that actually does this. Go ahead, Bill.
So for me, I think when you look at it from the point of view of I'm a user of the products, this would be fabulous for a lot of classes of people. But I spent so much time in operations and doing video for large corporations that had to manage operations. The support burden of adding something like Blackmagic's products into the Apple ecosystem would blow up Apple's headcount and a bunch of other stuff in work that I don't think any software manufacturer really loves to do. One of the things I most admire about Apple is that they've built their products in such a way that it's not a huge support burden. Yes, they have the Genius bars, and that functions for end user operators to solve their problems, but for a professional class of users doing professional equipment, to blow up Apple's support burden for all of these Blackmagic products would be a complete reorganization of that part of their business. And I kind of don't see that coming. That's just me. I might be wrong.
Good, Jesse.
Alex, you just had to pick the scab, didn't you? Those links are meant to establish trust, but increasingly as you click through those links on more and more news websites, what you find is that they're linking back to the same site that they are. So as reported, here's what we said before, using it to confirm the information they're giving you now, which reinforces a bit of an echo chamber.
It does, but I will say it's saying, like, we already talked about this. Like, again, where we've used this in the past is like, I don't have to explain this whole thing to you. I did talk about it previously, and here's where it is, so that you can find what those things are. I think that I guess I would argue that I get that it's self-referencing, but it's also telling you I don't have to search through all the other articles on your web page to find the one that you talked about. If you said we talked about this earlier, then now I have to go search for it. If you put a hyperlink, if you just link that text, it means, oh, I can see what you said before, and so I don't have that problem with it. I can see where you're coming from, but I guess I would say that's,
when used correctly and responsibly, I am totally on board with what you're saying.
Everything when used, or when cars are used respectfully and responsibly, they're a great thing, and when they're not, they're a horrible thing. So I think that those are all the cases. I will say that I don't think that there's any chance that Apple will buy Blackmagic. I don't think there's almost any valid content in this article, or almost none, other than like the words that they use and the companies they refer to. I mean, the idea that they're like, it's doing DSLR and it's doing this, and it's when you see that, coming from my perspective, when you see someone say that, you just realize that they don't do this. They write about it, they read about it, they think about it, but they have speculative knowledge, not actual experience, because there are 100 reasons that a real camera is better than an iPhone. There are hundreds of, and it's not just the image, it's the sensor sensitivity, but it's also things like just the interface and how to get to things and how to rig to things and I'm doing tons of stuff with my iPhone as well as bigger cameras all the time. So I am very clear of what the differences are between them. I love shooting on my iPhone, but there's still times I pick up a bigger camera and hook it in. And so anyway, I just I think the chances of Apple buying BMD is almost zero, and the reasons are so many. Number one is the market. BMD's market is too small for Apple. They can't fit their hands into that jar, like that jar. BMD is a huge market for the camera market, but way too small for Apple. They're a consumer company. They don't want to make cameras. They don't want to be responsible for cameras. They don't want to support cameras. They have a great relationship right now. They have Blackmagic building cameras for Apple. Like, why would you buy the cow when you can have the milk? And so the Blackmagic's doing all the things Apple wants. It's building great products, and Apple doesn't have to deal with any of the antitrust things that would come up if Apple bought this. If Apple bought Blackmagic, there'd be all kinds of regulatory problems for Apple. By Apple working and partnering with Blackmagic, it actually makes it look better for them. They have Final Cut and they have things, but look, we have our own products, but we're still partnered with an outside partner, helping them be successful. That's great for Apple. I just don't think that there's any reason for them to do that. I might eat my words here, but highly unlikely. And I think it's highly unlikely that Grant would want to be told what to do. I think that's the number one thing, is that Grant really is in the position where, he is a Steve Jobs. He is the Steve Jobs of video, and he gets to do whatever he wants. There's 1,000 people that just do what Grant wants to do. And I think that Grant is very happy in that environment. And I think that Grant would be very unhappy inside of an Apple environment. I think that he would feel stifled, and he'd be angry, and within 5 years he'd be gone, and he'd start another company that would compete with what they just bought. Go ahead, Courtney.
I just think they could incorporate all that Blackmagic full frame sensor and lens mounts into the iPhone. You could have a 30-pound iPhone. Now,
hey, I'm for it.
The other thing is they're both hardware manufacturers, but in a limited amount of the market, other than the phone market. If you leave out the phone market, but if we're talking about professional cinema, Apple has a very small portion of the market as far as professional cinema goes, and so does Blackmagic. So you say, well, it might make a good fit, but if you look at the way the companies are configured, Blackmagic has always been famous for low margin, a lot of bang for the buck. And Apple has always been known for high margin sales hardware. So I don't think Apple would be willing to suck up that low profit margin hardware to fit into their super high profit margin hardware. It doesn't make a good fit at all. It just doesn't fit with their whole. They've always been a high profit, a luxury type offer for the market. And I don't see that Blackmagic fitting into that marketing.
And answer, no. Next question.
Clickbait.
Paul Wallace is up next from Austin, Texas, and Paul says, #1 series on Apple TV is Disclaimer. What do you think of the cinematography by Emmanuel Lubezki and Bruno Delbonnel?
I haven't seen it yet. I don't know if we've seen it yet. I mean, I'm working through one, theory thing after. We watched The Pretender last night, the first episode. It's kind of fun. It was like from the late 90s. And I just barely remembered it being out, but I was like, I think I remember liking this, and we turned it on and we were like, oh yeah, I remember it. It's great. And so we were watching that. It's funny when you go back and look at old TV shows in how formulaic the framing, the dialogue, the scenes, everything else. It's really, it is, the storyline's fun. But you realize, I don't know, it's hard to watch I think we're so used to watching true filmmaking in streaming now that going back to the old formulaic TV is harder. But this, I think so. I think the trailer looks amazing, and it has Cate Blanchett in it, so it's got to be good. But I haven't been able to. Our family hasn't gotten to watching that, and if it's rougher than what I can watch with my teenage kids, I probably won't see it anytime soon because we tend to watch these things together. I will say that the one that we just got out of, that I watched without, was The Devil's Hour, which I can't remember what streaming service that's on, but it's really good. It's kind of like BBC. It's like I can't kind of describe what it is, but it's a typical BBC kind of thing of time. It's a different take on time travel, I guess, is what I would say. And the other one that we saw recently was Slow Horses. I had to explain to my father what Slow Horses was. And I think almost anybody here listening will know this reference, but my dad did, which was, I was like, it's MI5, it's Rumpole of the Bailey MI5 style. And he was like, oh, I got to watch that. But that'll take some people really far back. I think that's like 80s British production. Yeah, go ahead, Bill.
I had a guy who I know vaguely who said, I used to be on the crew working on a show called The Mentalist, and I hadn't seen it for a while. I noticed it was on Max, so I started watching it. It was really interesting to go back to a show that succeeded for multiple seasons, is not a high-profile show, but I was trying to think, why did this thing become so popular back then? And for me, it got down to the writing. It was not that it was completely different or but just the craftsmanship of plot and the scenes was really strong. And it reminded me that without good writing, I don't care how fancy you get, if you can't make those plots and those characters come alive through dialogue and the rest of that, it's really hard to sustain stuff over, I don't know how many seasons they got, like 8-10 seasons.
I think the problem really for a lot of these is the larger arc that everyone seems obsessed with. I don't think it works. Like, I think that building these deep arcs that have to be, I think you can have things that you refer back to, but I don't think, I think he had this larger arc with some, with a person, an adversary. I don't think that was necessary. I think that they had really good actors with really good writing. And I think that each one of those, like, I think Law & Order had it figured out in a lot of ways. And people look down on Law & Order, but it's made more money than everybody else. And the reason is I feel like I can just turn one on and watch it. There are subplots going on in Law & Order. As someone who's watched, I don't watch it much anymore. It's a little, but as someone who used to watch it all the time, it's kind of like that's the end of the day. We'd watch a Law & Order. And you're so far behind, and there's so many Law & Orders that you can just turn one on and watch it, and you don't feel like I have to know what it is. Now, you see the subplots of, subtle relationships between people, but the relationships don't get moved into the front of the thing. And I think as soon as people start dating, you always know that, well, you've got 2 more seasons. Like in two seasons we're gonna be done. And so because it just gets all soapy, and we just call it getting soapy. Like, it got soapy, and then we stop watching. And a lot of these could last forever. If they didn't need to add that tension that I think writers feel like is necessary, that I don't think is. Next question.
Next question comes from Craig Kadoki in Toronto. Early teardowns of the new Mac Mini show upgradable storage similar to the Studio. Will we see this in other Macs to come, and who will we be getting replacement storage from?
Jason.
Oh boy. All right. So I have one of these, and they are entirely too cool. By the way, it is 3 lanes of Thunderbolt 5. I finally got to test it, and I had to look, but so iFixit has not done their official teardown, but there is removable storage. And to answer the last part, as far as I can tell, only OWC has ever been able to do this for any proprietary Apple anything ever. So if they do it, it'll come from OWC.
Go, Courtney.
Yeah, this is not user upgradable. There have been somebody who have upgraded the storage on it, but it involves unsoldering the here's the article on it, unsoldering the flash RAM chips from their storage card and soldering a higher density flash RAM chip onto that motherboard. And unless you're very good at reballing and soldering surface mount devices, I wouldn't advise it. It's not M2 compatible. It's Apple's proprietary version of that connector. I think that board is only removable so that they don't have to carry as many SKUs in stock, and they can rebalance their inventory if they get a lot more requests for the higher RAM, which they make a big, higher storage, which they make a huge profit on by upgrading you to the higher, from 128 to 256 to 512 to 1 terabyte. You're going to pay, 4 times market value for those little 512 or 1 terabyte bumps. So they're just going to stock a lot of these easily replaceable boards so that they can open them up and change them over if their manufactured inventory out of China tends to be too heavily weighted one side or the other side, depending upon what the market orders. Perhaps some third party will reverse engineer it at some point and make their own, but it will void your warranty probably, and Apple will do everything they can to make those third party boards not work in the machine.
Yeah, I think that when you buy into the Apple ecosystem, you're not buying into upgradability. Like it's just that's the game, And so trying to hack it some other way, I won't even take my products to be fixed by an authorized, somewhere authorized to fix it. I take it to the Apple store and I have them fix it. If I'm going to have them fix it, I rarely have to have an Apple product fixed. I mean, I just don't. I take really good care of them, and I don't. And they seem to last. I haven't had an Apple product go bad for a very long time. To the extent that I'm not sure that I really should be paying for all that Apple Care, but I still do because I know I can just take it in and they'll fix it and it'll go away and I'll get it back again. So I think that if it's not an authorized shop and it's not Apple, I would not do it. They're not doing authorized. I would not do an unauthorized upgrade to an Apple product. You're just wading into all kinds of trouble, And if you don't like it, buy a PC. It's not like that's the game. It's not that you're trying to play baseball in a football game. Next, I know that I bet you the football would go a long way if you used a baseball bat, but you still can't use it. Next question.
Tony Mobley in Noonan, Georgia is up next. House of Worship groundbreaking happened last weekend. What are some must-haves for in-person and online worshipers? Notes modest budget.
Yeah, it's interesting. My family has doesn't have a house of worship, but they're on the board of the house of worship, and they're trying to figure it out that they have the same. I think some of the same challenges that Tony's house of worship is working on as smaller congregations, and so I'm really thinking about we've been thinking technically about that process, and I think that part of it is really making sure that the church itself is very mic friendly, camera friendly. Think about how to tastefully add lighting that's going to look good, for a camera. Tastefully adding enough baffling and so on and so forth that it feels warm, and still, it may have to be flexible space where on a Sunday to Sunday to Sunday, you have a more closed space that feels more intimate for 6 to 8 or 10 or 12 people, but you could still open it up. It's somewhat temporary where you could push it back to the sides or move it out if you wanted to have a wedding or some kind of a funeral or 4 of them. Anyway, so those are all things that you may want to think about in that area. But we're thinking about that a little bit as well. And so we'll get back. I'll get back to you on that one. But yeah, I think that the main things are obviously Mickey says connectivity, sound, lights, camera, stuff we've talked about in the past. But the connectivity is important. I think you've got that pretty well solved. I will say that that it is that most churches are horrible. Most house of worships are horrible for sound, and you really want to think about how to fix that. That's going to be your number one thing, because really not listenable. What's important when someone does a service, what's important is listening to them, and so because most people don't watch it, they listen to it, and so thinking about how that's going to work is important. So something to think about. Next question.
Chester Sweeney in Las Vegas, Nevada. Best 3 mics for recording during hang gliding various locations.
Go ahead, Jesse.
Oh boy, I wouldn't be thinking so much about the mics as I would be about protecting it from all the wind that's going to happen. So I'd be going with lavaliers, probably the most expensive lavaliers you can afford, and getting them mounted inside all the whatever they're wearing, the jackets and the coats and all the straps and gear, so that you can hear their voices. Unless you're trying to capture the wind, in which case anything outside of their clothing will probably capture nothing but wind.
Go ahead, Courtney.
Now, I've never been hang gliding, but I have been up in a hot air balloon a couple of times and a blimp. But I'm wondering what you say, different locations. I agree with Jesse. If you want to just record your commentary as you're hang gliding over these different locations, get a lavalier, protect it well, and get a personal recorder, so you don't have to worry about transmitting to something below. You'll get great range as long as you're within you don't fly too far away from your receiver, because it's going to be probably line of sight. But if you do want to get one of the DJI wireless system that has recording in the unit itself, that would be a good choice. Windshield it from the wind. But I'm wondering, this is what I was going to mention, because I've been up in hot air balloons, and you think, oh gosh, we're going to be up in the wind. No, you're moving with the wind. Now, hang gliding, you're kind of going up and down and through the currents. But if you're moving with the wind or into the wind, I'm wondering how much wind noise there will be. And the best kind of protection, if you're going to use a high-quality mic, would be a Rycote basket windscreen. Put this and the dead cat, or the wind weasel, as I call it, the furry cover for it here will protect it. And for winds up to about 40 miles an hour, which, I doubt you'll be going faster than that into the wind on a hang glider. And this would be if you want to capture the sounds. That was the other thing that amazed me while up in a hot air balloon. When the burner's not going, which they only intermittently turn it on, you can talk from one balloon to another balloon just, at almost a normal voice, and they can hear you because there's nothing making any noise, and it's dead quiet if you're over a quiet area. So sound travels really well when you're up in the air, and whatever you're traveling in is not generating any noise. So it might be a good, interesting way to capture sounds of different locations from the air.
James Haldane says that Sennheiser MKH416 shotgun mics would work well, but watch out for cheap knockoffs. I assume you want some recording some wind noise as part of the experience. And Craig said dead cats, but Craig said, "Oh, we're calling them wind weasels now." I think it's a more correct. It's less dead, more weasel. Anyway, so and then James Haldane's also said Zeppelins. Mickey said Lavs, Zaxcom TRX or ZMT wind protection. Go ahead, Bill.
It depends on what you're trying to record. If you just want the experience, I think all of these are really good things. I would think in terms of a head-worn mic, if you're trying to get commentary from the pilot or something like that and you want it to be clear, again, it goes back to the old inverse square principle, get the mic close. I also think, I haven't done hang gliding, but I did do a first jump out of an airplane, and I just remember the wind forces on my first parachute jump were substantial, and they change as you go through various heights. So you can be in relatively calm, and then I remember out of the airplane at 10,000 feet, it was amazingly windy as I jumped out, and then after the canopy opened up and I was able to float down, it was surprising how much difference in the experience was as I went through climatic layers. So again, I would try to get the mic as close as possible. And again, if you're trying to get the whole experience for everybody just kind of watching from a distance, that's one thing. If you really want clear commentary, I always go for getting the mic as close to the mouth as possible.
Go, Jason.
Yeah, I was completely amazed when I jumped out of a plane how loud the rush was, and then when the parachute opened, how quiet it was. Penn Jillette put a lavalier microphone in his glasses, and my immediate thought when this question came up was, get a lavalier and put it in whatever you're using to protect your eyes. It's a pretty good placement, and it'll stay out of the way.
Yeah, I'd be curious. I think in a closed helmet, you'd be able to, it just depends on what you're trying to show on the camera as well as you're recording. So, you should be wearing a helmet if you're hang gliding. So you've got some kind of helmet, so figure out what that, you might look like. Some of these do have helmets. Some of the paramotor helmets have mic systems built into them. So it might be something that you have a larger mic that has there. I think that if you had a hard surface around the front, which is not a bad idea to protect your jaw and so on and so forth, that's going to help break a lot of wind, along with some, with a wind weasel in front of you, you may get some pretty good audio to discuss it. Next question.
Zach Stallsmith in Chautauqua, New York's up next. I use an X32 to send Dante audio to vMix. I lost audio for 5 seconds twice yesterday. The stream health was fine. NDI video was fine. Network did not go down. Everything is on the same physical switch. Dante card is the clock. What might have caused this?
I'll go, Jason.
Zach, you've reached the limit of what this switch can do. You need to separate. I don't know if it's just NDI that you should separate, but if I were you, I would separate Dante and I would separate NDI. You need two physically separate switches, or really knowing what you're doing.
Yeah, Mickey said, try to determine what point in the pipeline the audio dropped out. Was it the Dante transport from the X32 to vMix, earlier in the pipeline, later in the pipeline, within the vMix machine, the encoder? If it is in Dante, what is your Dante network infra like? Is it a converged network or an isolated Dante network? What switches? Yeah, and I would definitely, the first thing I would do is probably separate out my network. That's, again, it's not absolutely necessary, but you really have to know what you're doing network-wise to allow Dante to be living with other things and expect it to work if you're using it as a core delivery method. So I would definitely consider that. Next question.
Joshua Feingold in New York is up next. I want to print a photo book of a recent vacation. Is there a preferred vendor, or are they all basically the same?
Go ahead, Jesse.
Well, you didn't give a price, so I'm going to tell you what we do when we get into a project like this. We split the task between two houses. We send the photos to be printed by a proper printing house, and then we take those printouts and we send them to a bespoke bookbinder to take those and make a nice hardcover, get it leather bound. We don't usually do this for ourselves. We do this for clients as a collection of here's what we worked on for the last year or two. And boy, howdy, is it like a home run hit every time that book appears in someone's hands, whether it's your own personal vacations landing in your hands or something that you pass off to someone else. And I think you might be surprised that it's not cheap, but it's probably cheaper than you're expecting to have somebody make a book out of. You send them paper and they make you a leather-bound book with gold embossing and customized marbling on the inset and stuff like that. It's really, really worth every penny.
Shutterfly and Nation's Photo Lab are probably the most popular ones, or two of the most popular ones. We've done Nation's Photo Lab. I just don't have the energy to do what Jesse just said. So I think his produces better books. So if you're not looking at price, I think I would follow Jesse's advice there. But we found that Nation's Photo Lab worked a little bit better for us for what we were doing. I will say, do not underestimate the power of handing a client or somebody a printed memoriam of what happened. If you're shooting lots of behind the scenes or anything, like Apple used to do this. I don't know what service they used to use, but I used to print books of things. Like my wife and I went to St. Martin and I shot a whole bunch of photos, and I literally shot all the photos. And the night before we left St. Martin, I just printed them all. I put them in a book and sent it out to print. So the same week we got home from St. Martin's, we got this book that was, all the photos and all the things and everything else that was there. It went over well. It wasn't a particularly high quality print. I did it the same with my kids' births and so on and so forth. And it's a really popular thing to do. So I would look at it. I know people who've built whole businesses around that. So book printing is pretty interesting. It's probably something we should do a special on or something. Next question.
Tony Mobley in Noonan, Georgia. Is anyone using, I think he meant the Apple M4 computer? And if so, what's their first impressions?
Jason?
Yep. Got it on Friday. Had to disconnect it in order to hold it. It is stupidly fast. It's just just blow me away fast. Alex, I need one of your Widow makers to really put it to its paces.
I'll send you a link.
All right.
All right. Go ahead, Courtney.
I just wanted to ask Jason which he usually opts for the biggest and best and as fully loaded. How much did it end up costing you, and how fully loaded is it? Is it the top end, or is it the entry level?
It's closer towards the top end. It's the highest end processor and about 2 terabytes, 10 gigabit Ethernet. All told, just around $2,000.
$2,000. Wow. Not entry level.
But also not $4,000, which is, I think, what they top out at.
Next question.
Next one comes to us from Douglas Carmichael. I've started experimenting with the Sonnox Oxford Inflator as part of a mastering chain, and it's surprisingly effective for creating a powerful master without overpowering one's ears. Does anyone else have any experience with it?
The Sonnox Oxford.
Is this a plug-in? I've never even heard of it.
Yeah, I am not familiar with it.
Sounds like something for filling up your air mattresses. You know?
Yeah, it's a plug-in.
He says mastering, so it's probably try to automate the process of making things forward, and that's what a good mastering engineer makes sure that every instrument is clean and comes through the way it's supposed to.
It provides instant excitement and uncompromising dynamic range. That's what it says on the website. So
that's what we all want.
I think I don't think we have a lot of practical experience there. So we'll have to hopefully take a look at it. Next question.
Steve Bauer in Seattle is up next, and he says, any recommendation for software to find duplicate photos on a Mac that are the same but different resolutions and different dates?
Yeah, go ahead, Jason.
Yeah, this sounds crazy, but Photos is finally actually pretty good at this. I hate to say it because it has very frequently been terrible at it, but the most recent version of Photos, if you give it the time, it will actually explicitly say, this is lower resolution, it's the same photo. I find it works pretty well, but there are some other software things that maybe Bill will cover.
Hi, go Bill.
Yeah, I think I used to have a program that I used reasonably frequently to find dupes and things like that called Cleanup, and it was pretty good. It's not perfect, but it does allow you to set a bunch of parameters. Do I, yes or no, want to compare photo sizes? Do I, yes or no, want to compare photo resolutions? And after you check through the number of things, what it did was it aggregated from a whole series of hard drives all the same things of the categories that I had checked, puts them into a list, and then says, do you want to keep one? Do you want to dump everything but one? What are the rules-based things you want to do in terms of cleaning up all of these duplicates? And it worked pretty effectively the few times that I had to clean up big libraries with a lot of duplicates from bad backups that I had done.
Next question.
Marty Paseta Jr. in Los Angeles says, I'm upgrading my 13-year-old daughter's desk computer. Her new desk is a drafting table with a very strong frame. I'd love any recommendations for an arm for a 24-inch monitor and the monitor that will connect to the Mac Mini. Thanks for any thoughts.
Go, Jason.
You cannot go wrong with Ergotron, and there are a lot of kind of copies out there. The higher end monoprice have that double gas cantilever that makes it pretty good. But if you want something solid, you can't go wrong with Ergotron.
Yeah, and it depends on what. I guess the question is also, what is she doing she's 13, but what is she doing with those with the computer? What is she doing with the monitors? I have Huanu, Huan, I think it's UO, and I have a bunch of them. They're all around here, and they're not very expensive. They're $80 or $100 each, and there's 2 arms, and they're pretty stiff. They can hold a lot of monitors in a lot of different configurations, and so I found them to be reasonable for what I'm doing. Again, it depends on what your daughter's doing. I'd rather have 2 monitors that I can move around that are less expensive in 1080p than one big monitor or one more expensive monitor, because I like having desk space and the ability to focus. Even 3 monitors. I use a lot of Dell monitors. I don't spend a lot of money on them, and I have lots of them. And I have usually, if I'm doing color correction, if she needs critical color, that's a different problem. But if she's doing music, she'll love to have multiple monitors open and able to do stuff. So, having more monitors, and that Mac Mini will support, I think, 3. But I would think about having more monitors than start with one. You can start with one, but I will say that once you get used to, she's a basic homework, and she's an artist. So that's what Marty just said in the chat. So I think that maybe you might want to think about also the potential of one monitor plus the Wacom one. The Wacom one she won't need. I have a Wacom one, and I have the Intuos or the Cintiqs. The Wacom one's fine. so for what you need. So I would think about that along with the again, I wouldn't go higher, but you could go to I like 1080p's, and then I like to add more monitors to it. Go ahead, Bill.
I messed up. I called that software in the last question cleanup. It's actually tidy up, and I apologize for that. I gave you bad information.
Go ahead, Courtney.
One thing to consider, the thing that hit me a little bit wrong is her next desk is a drafting table, and typically drafting tables have an angled desk surface, and this may screw up because a lot of those arms that you mount monitors on, the first joint is designed. They're designed to be working in where gravity is directly down and not at an angle. So a lot of times that first joint isn't gas levered, it just swivels left and right. And in this case, if you have a true drafting table that's at an angle, it's going to hang down. You may be limited in how that support is going to work for that monitor. And if you change the angle of the table, it's going to change the dynamics of the support for that monitor. So take that into consideration. If she's just using a drafting table and using it perfectly flat, then it's not a problem. But be careful if you're going to moving it up on an angle. It may change the way the dynamics work.
Yeah, you may need to attach it to something other than the table if you're going to do a drafting table. I agree with Courtney. A quick reminder, of course, that we have shirts. They're for sale for only a couple more days until the 20th. You can go to officehours.global/shop and see those shirts. Those are they help support office hours. They keep the servers on, keep everything working here. So these are our Power Up Office Hours shirts, and they are again on sale only for a couple more days. officehours.global/shop. Thanks so much. Thanks to all the great questions we had. We didn't get to all of them, but we will get to them if you just put them back in. If you send a question in Mukana and we see it, we can put it back in. You have to put it back in. If you put it in a QR code, you can then we'll put it back in. So it just depends on how you submitted those questions. But thank you for all the great questions. Thanks to the panelists. Can't do this without you. Great conversation as usual. And thanks to the incredible team on the back end that makes this possible. That helps manage these questions, that helps manage the interactions, that also develops the software and manages the hardware and all the other things that are required to make this show as great as it is. We really appreciate everybody's contribution. Now, if we'd done this in person, the Tlaloc Traversal we would have traveled 18,000 miles. That's 29,000 kilometers, and that is 145 million bananas for scale. All right, let's go ahead and jump into After Hours. That was good.
Fun
there
conversation.
You go.
I can't decide, Jason. I finally got the Dream Machine Pro. I haven't done anything with it because I was thinking we should go into After Hours and have you and Guy and a couple other people. And
I'll totally help you set it up.
Touched it, and so I was like, we should just do this as a little thing. So we'll see. Maybe we'll find a time to do that. Maybe maybe we'll broadcast it.
Might lose some internet in the middle, but
Nah, that's fine. That's fine.
Nah, it's all part of it.
Maybe we'll do like a lab.
I'd love to.
To a stream. Maybe I'll stream it and we'll do it. Let me think about that. I got to think about it quickly because I needed to put it into operation.
Yeah, good call.
All right. Thanks. Thanks, everybody.